Oh, hey, good
Hey,
afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Rebel News Daily live stream, wherein we used to talk about the news of the day, but there is only this news of the day, and it is the Public Order Emergency Commission, or what we're calling here at Rebel News, the Trucker Commission. And it is Halloween, and my friend William Diaz and I have spent the entire day watching the absolute horror show that is the Trucker Commission unfold. It was former police chief Peter Sloly testifying today. This was cross examination, and right off the hop, chaos, backstabbing, palace intrigue, and of course, the sleaziness of Navigator in there for good measure. And it didn't get any better as the day went on, quite frankly. What did you think, William?
well, and I see you again, Sheila. I think on our last live stream, I try to have some empathy for Peter Sloly. I try to defend former Chief
I know you
Sloly,
did.
and I try to show how great of a person he was. I honestly think I would have some trouble doing that today after hearing his testimony, after hearing him claim moral high ground, after hearing him talk about systemic racism, the police force, systemic biases, and everything that we heard today. So definitely an interesting day, as it is always during the Trucker Commission.
I should give everybody a little bit of background. So, the Public Order Emergency Inquiry or Commission is a fail-safe that's built into the Emergencies Act. And for those of you who have been following along, and I don't yet know how you couldn't know, but in February, Justin Trudeau invoked a counterterrorism law that's never been used before called the Emergencies Act to dissipate, to extinguish the entirely peaceful truckers convoy for freedom that was in our nation's capital for approaching nearly 4 weeks. They arrived there sort of the 27th, 28th of January, and Justin Trudeau hit the nuclear button on February 14th. And in the lead up to that, there had only been five, even slightly, charges of violence. And I think two of those, as our friend Danny Bulford explained, I think two of those were actually committed by Ottawa residents against the convoy. And actually, I noticed in a
Mm-hmm.
CSIS note today, it's in one of my tweets, but I know we can't bring it up, so I'll just read it when we get there. I noticed in a CSIS note from, oh, I forget his name, Vignette, anyways, the head of CSIS, in a conversation with Peter Sloly, that they were actually concerned about violence coming from the residents of Ottawa. And as it turns out, he was right, because they were the ones who were acting up and
Mm-hmm.
committing violence against the truckers by throwing eggs. But if you are at home and you'd like to get involved and support the work that we do completely willingly, unlike the bought and paid for Justin Trudeau colonized mainstream media. And again, that's something we should bring up today, because that came up in communications
Mm-hmm.
between public safety and the prime minister's office, that as early as, oh, I think it was the 23rd of January. I'll go back in my
Was very
tweets and look.
early.
But
Yeah.
yeah, the convoy wasn't even in Ottawa yet. And those malicious BS peddlers were already deciding that they were going to paint the convoy before they had even gotten to Ottawa, before they'd even done a thing, as uh, Insurrection North, January 6th North. And I think January 6th is highly exaggerated. And they were going to like step it up that much more and paint the convoy that hadn't even arrived in Ottawa as guilty of pre-crimes against the state. And they were waiting for their friends in the mainstream media to pave the way. Particularly, I think it was Global News that was working on a story about just how awful these people that they'd never talked to and had never even gone to Ottawa quite yet, how awful they would be, because, as conservatives, we're just guilty of pre-crimes. We're murderers and rapists waiting for a place to happen, if you ask the mainstream media. But if you'd like to support the
Mm.
work that we do, and in spite of the BS merchants in the mainstream media, might I suggest you leave a paid chat? You can do that on Rumble in the form of a Rumble rant, or on Odyssey. They're called hyper chats there. If it's over $5, we'll do our very best to address your question, query, comment, story idea live on air. I can't guarantee that we will, though, because it's so busy. We just sort of run out of time. And I'm going to be honest with you. It's Halloween, and I got to be right done at 5 because if my little niece shows up at my door looking really cute and really spooky, and I don't get the opportunity to make her tell me at least 3 dad jokes before I put way too much candy in her bag, I'm going to be very upset, and I'm not going to be a pleasure to work with tomorrow. So let's just get through what we can today,
You need to
William.
put
And I think
some frozen Alberta meat in her bag. That's what she needs to eat.
she knows where to find steak, and it's over at Auntie's house. We should get to the first clip of the day, and this one caught me off guard because I was like, did I hear that right? Because, you're sort of listening. You're not really watching. You're listening and typing, live tweeting. And if people want to follow my live tweets from today, it's at truckercommission.com and .ca, I believe. But it was something else. Why don't we roll clip 1? Because I couldn't believe the language that was used here.
Chief asked who we should have in to be POU incident commander, and I asked for Dave Springer. At that point, Mark Patterson said, Dave Springer, an inspector, came into my office this morning and told me what I should be doing, that he wasn't actually there. The chief responded by saying if he did that, he would cut off Dave Springer's nuts and call his boss. And it goes on. And I don't recall, do you remember the rest of the statement you made?
I don't even recall that incident, sir.
Okay. So you don't recall it, or it didn't happen?
I don't recall the combination of things that she's talking about here, sir.
And you don't recall saying that you'll cut off Dave Springer's nuts and use them as bookends?
And use them as bookends? No, sir. I don't recall saying that. I don't think I've ever said anything.
Okay. That was the point in the day wherein I liked Peter Sloly, but it just diffused after that. I liked his candid language, but that is a very contentious exchange with that man who's examining him is the lawyer for the Ottawa Police Service. And Chief Sloly is no longer with the Ottawa Police Service. I guess he insists that nobody even call him Chief Sloly anymore, or former Chief Sloly, just Mr. Sloly. He keeps correcting the lawyers. But I believe there is a lawsuit percolating. I don't know if it's been filed yet or it's being drafted. Maybe we'll see it shake out after all of this, but I think there's probably a lawsuit between Sloly and at least the Ottawa Police Service, quite possibly the city of Ottawa, stemming from his unceremonious departure, where I think the relationship between him and the police force became very untenable. Actually, there was quite a few things where Sloly remarked that his deputies were undermining him and just going rogue, sabotaging him. And interestingly enough, one of his deputies, Steve Bell, then replaced him as interim police chief. He said that he had difficulty getting Hendon reports from his own staff. Those are the intel reports from the OPP as the convoy approached. But then the lawyer said, but you were CC'd on all of these. So I don't know if he wasn't just reading his own emails. But he testified that he had trust issues with his own deputies, Bell and Ferguson, after they suddenly, without asking anybody, made Superintendent Jamie Dunlop the event commander of the convoy without anybody's knowledge. And this was particularly concerning because Superintendent Dunlop was the event commander just months earlier, wherein a car was flipped over and a small-scale riot broke out after the annual University of Ottawa Panda game. And he was actually still part of an ongoing investigation into the policing tactics that night. I think they had 8 people charged with mischief that night. And somebody was actually charged with riot, which is one more person than was ever charged in the convoy. And a car was flipped over, and I'm pretty sure the car was never flipped over in the convoy. So they actually had a riot of university students. Yeah. This guy oversaw it. They think that some of the police actions sort of inflamed the situation there. And Chief Sloly's 2 deputies said, you know who should be in charge? That guy. Plus, we're not going to tell the police chief that we've made him event commander. So they were sort of already cutting him out of everything. Sounds like as early as February 3rd.
Yeah. Really? Well, I mean, I went to University of Ottawa before working with the Rebel News, and I can tell you, the celebration after the Panda game was not small. There were a lot of students out on the street, and the police definitely did not have a handle on the situation. I don't know how they couldn't. Might have just been competency or lack of organization. But if that was the man who was placed to be the event commander for the convoy, that same person who handled the Panda game, I really have some trouble trusting his abilities to be an event commander. But no, I totally agree with you. I'm sure the OPS has something prepared for Sloly. You could see the line of questioning was probably one of the most tense line of questionings that I've seen since the beginning of the inquiry. Even when Brendan Miller was with Zegzili or McKenney or Jim Watson, it was not as tense as it was today. So it was very interesting to see that.
Yeah. And Brendan Miller, I don't think he ever gets tense. He just asks questions that people don't like.
He's just firm.
And I think
exactly.
Yeah. There was also, I mentioned Navigator, those greaseballs over at Navigator. They were hired by Ottawa Police Service. So I'll go back a step. If you are in trouble as a politician or a bureaucrat, like a OPS here, having public relations issues, and you've done something wrong, you hire Navigator. They were hired by OPS in consultation with the OPS board to give advice to OPS and the board. Their February 2nd meeting notes with the chief of police and Navigator. And they were sort of scheming about how do we save face with the public? Not how do we reach a peaceful resolution to what's happening here, but how do we save our public reputations? And they said, what do we need to do more of? Tickets, arrests, use of force? That was one of the suggestions. Use of force. Then what? Do we go to politicians? Do we go to big lockdowns? Like, all this stuff was on the table as early as, February 2nd. So we're into the very first week. And in those meetings, they said, we're going to go out and lay charges. They wanted the prime minister to get involved. Does he have incentive to get involved? They asked. Then they said, this is my favorite, the truckers know the rights and they're not afraid. So you could have went in there and used force, and the truckers were going to be peaceful and use their rights. And they said, who can we bring in as a politician to save face? And then lastly, the heavy police presence, those guys in riot gear that didn't need to be, the guys without any identification on them, the guys that looked like they were going to break up a Panda game celebration. That was a communication strategy. It wasn't necessary. It was all political theater. And it came from Navigator to make it seem like the police were doing something. They said, we're going to show up in riot gear, we're going to use floodlights at night, and we're going to use repeated police stops, because it was theater to make it seem to the public, and particularly the worrywarts who lived downtown, that they were doing something. So they were make-believing authoritarian thugs. This stuff, the riot horses, this is all a strategic communications campaign from those crisis actors over at Navigator.
Yeah, it definitely did have an impact on the morale of the protesters, though. I think when they saw these measures being used, it had an impact on their morale. As people that are peacefully protesting in Ottawa and seeing that this is the tactics that are being used against them, that's a tactic that you're deciding to use against peaceful protesters that are protesting vaccine mandates. Yeah.
And Navigator thought this was something that would help them save face with the public, when actually I think it really turned a lot of people who were like, maybe these truckers should just go home. Those images there turned people against the Ottawa police. It turned people like me who are like, yep, thin blue line. I'm pro police. Don't defund the police. And I see this and I'm like, I think maybe their budgets are a little too high in Ottawa if they can do that to grandmas who just want to be able to visit their grandkids and watch them play hockey without getting a jab.
Yeah. And you saw also in some of the analysis of the social media accounts, another thing, I'm not exactly sure what term they use, but I know that they hired a company, or maybe they had a company already in place, to analyze how their response to the convoy will affect the view that citizens of Ottawa had on the police. And it showed that the people that are living outside of the downtown area would see the response of the police as being too harsh and would lower the support that they have for the police. And contrary to people that are downtown, that are usually very governments that are usually very liberal because they work for the government, the people that are living downtown in the vast majority work for the government, whereas people that are living a little bit further away don't work for the government. So I think they had a different vision of the police because of it.
Look at this. We're watching the Navigator's strategic communication strategy unfold right in front of us on the screen. Good job, Navigator. I think they got paid close to $200,000 for the absolutely awful advice they gave Sloly and the city of Ottawa. Just grotesque. Let's go to clip 2. Because I could talk about how bad Navigator is all day. And I grew to like or dislike them during the times of Alison Redford's Sky Palace construction. They brought in Navigator to help her out when everybody, conservatives, liberals, NDP, everybody was turning on Alison Redford, and they brought in Navigator to help, and it definitely didn't help. They never help. Let's go to clip 2. Former Ottawa Police Chief Sloly was asking an internal crisis management team what the next steps would be to contain the convoy, and their response was, well, political.
Keep scrolling, please. P.S. That's Peter Sloly. You ask them the question. So you've just had the POU meeting the previous day. What do we need to do more? More arrests, tickets, use of force? Then what? Go to the politicians? Go into big lockdown mode? Massive show of police presence and then hold hands and come together? Or 2, bigger lockdown of city for weekend? And then you'll see Aaron at the bottom. Aaron is from Navigator or ASI.
ASI, sir.
Job is to keep the peace and keep people protected. When you take a hard line, citizens of Ottawa want this, but not everyone. Need to acknowledge not everyone represents or resonates as fringe group. This is a national problem, and Prime Minister needs to get us out of it.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, they
I
were
don't
there to
disagree.
protest Trudeau. They were
Yeah,
there
exactly.
to protest Trudeau.
I don't disagree with everything he's saying here. I think that it was indeed a political issue. It was not a policing issue, which is the reason why they should have negotiated with the federal government. The federal government should have accepted to get those people and to negotiate with those people, because that's your role as a politician. You're supposed to talk to your constituents, and when you're a prime minister, you don't only represent the Liberal Party voters, you don't represent the Liberal Party donors, you represent all Canadians. When you go abroad, you don't say, my name is Justin Trudeau, I am for the Liberal Party of Canada. You say, my name is Justin Trudeau, I am the Prime Minister of Canada. And they should have negotiated. And if the levels of government had decided to negotiate with the protester and to actually speak with them and hear their concerns, I don't think we would be in the same situation that we are in right now. It's
true. I'm just trying to cruise through some of these clips because we've got so many and they're crazy. And I really want to get to that text message exchange between the two political operatives because it's just revolting. And it's, they do stuff like this, they do. But to see it in a text message, it's really an extra level of gall. But before we get to that, we heard last week Steve Bell use the word assaultive to mean anything but assault. but like people who are experiencing discomfort and angst and anxiety and maybe inconvenience and possibly a traffic snarl. Like there's a lot of people who are being inconvenienced, and they're using inconvenience interchangeably with the word assaultive, which I think isn't even a real word. Assault is a thing. Assaultive, I'm not so sure. And we saw Steve Bell say, yes, it was assaultive. And then when pressed on that, but no actual assault, just like
it's only inconvenience.
Feeling.
No report of assault that actually did happen. I think a lot of people are confusing assault with inconvenience or violence with the disagreement. I think that's an issue that people in Ottawa have.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's someone who doesn't share your exact viewpoint on everything. Assaultive. Sloly tried that. Apparently not doing his homework about how poorly it went over for Steve Bell with the public. Perhaps he should have asked Navigator what the public thought about it. Or maybe he did, and that's why they gave him such bad advice. But he tried it. And he was sort of had to backtrack when he was pushed on it. If we could show clip 4.
And so there was never a declaration, of course, as a riot, and there was no formal declaration that there was an unlawful assembly. And therefore, the protesters who were there, who were sitting there, no one in authority, it's fair to say, told them that they were doing anything illegal. Is that fair?
Again, I will cede to the legal definition of it, but I couldn't agree that that would be the case given the massive amount of social media, mainstream media coverage of what was happening in our city here and across the country. I think it'd be very hard to believe that any individual could not understand that there was a level of unlawfulness and public danger and risk, heightened risk, at any point from January 29th onwards.
I think that was the wrong clip. I think we wanted to show the clip before. I think that was clip 5, but that's still a great clip because there was no riot. There was no declaration of a riot. So if they declare what you're doing is a riot, rightly or wrongly, if you stay there now, you're participating in a riot. Nobody told them what they were doing was illegal. It wasn't declared illegal. And he said that there was a level of unlawfulness. Okay, well, what was that level of unlawfulness? Because we only saw 5 serious criminal charges for loosely violent things. And so it couldn't have been that unlawful. And he was also pressed on, well, if it was unlawful, why don't we see more arrests? Nobody was telling you couldn't enforce the criminal code. If you saw violence, it behooves you to defend the community. And they weren't laying charges because it wasn't unlawful. It wasn't lawless. And as someone pointed out, not even a window broke.
No, 100%. And I've been spending a little bit of time with Tamara Leish's lawyers recently, and I know what exactly has to be done and what exactly has to be said for a protest to be deemed a riot according to our legal system here in Canada. It's called the Riot Act. And if you want to go, look it up, you can go look it up yourself. I don't think any politician would have the guts to actually do what you have to be done for a protest to be illegal. But that should be coming out soon in the inquiry. That'll be interesting. Anyways, we've got Andrew Lawton that just entered our Airbnb right
great.
now. So I guess we could throw to a quick ad and then we'll be able to have him on as well.
Great.
Well, the remains of 215 children have been found in a mass grave in Canada.
Many of you know that just over a year ago, the discovery of the remains of 215 children was found at the Kamloops Indian Residential School at the Tecumseh First Nation. But what if I were to show you that what I just said wasn't true, and that in fact, a year later, not a single body has been found?
This mass grave is a painful reminder of the genocide.
Canada's leaders aren't condemning the burning of churches. No, they're endorsing the burning of churches.
A juvenile rib bone that surfaced in the same area.
You'd be surprised the number of people who say, I'm a doctor, I'm a paramedic. This is definitely a human bone, and it's definitely not.
Looks like the chief.
It is.
Could be.
We must redouble our efforts.
Mayor Khan, I was hoping that you would answer my question. What consequences are there going to be for people that don't abide by the climate green transition?
It's not an interview.
What are the consequences going to be?
Mr. Adler, you flew over 5,000 miles to be here to attend a summit that is promoting the elimination of fossil fuels. Isn't that hypocritical?
And the decision I made was that it was better for me to physically be here than to not be here.
They're doing like in here to make a statement that they care about the South governments, the South countries of the global South, but I don't think that that's not happening.
Well, would you look at that? Joining us now is my friend Andrew Lawton. Andrew's the senior journalist at True North and best-selling author of The Freedom Convoy. Andrew, what a pleasure to have you on the show with us today. Before we get into some of the nitty-gritty details of some of the crazy things we saw today, like those texts between senior government bureaucrats, what was your big takeaway from today? Do you like Sloly? Do you not like him? I can't decide.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I think a lot of people going into it thought that he was going to be the guy that was the convoy favorite as far as Ottawa police chiefs go. And certainly I think there's reason to believe that, because for the first 2.5 weeks of their protest, he was the guy that basically let the protest go. But in his messaging, he's had very different approaches. I mean, Paul Wells in his column last week said that he was very much the enforcer. And I think it was that he just didn't feel he had the resources to do it. So I think it's a bit mixed. But I also think that if you just take the convoy out of the equation, here was a guy that was very much thrown under the bus when it became convenient to do so. He had been the favorite on all of these woke diversity, challenging systemic racism, challenging sexual assault and systemic misogyny, he said. And then the second he didn't go along with what they wanted, he was out.
Yeah, that's true. He did testify to being directly undermined, and I think sabotaged, quite frankly, by his two deputies, Ferguson and Bell. Bell ending up being his successor when they started appointing people to be the, I guess, the event commander, they called it, of the convoy without even telling him. As early as February 3rd, the like backroom shenanigans started, and William brings it up all the time. I've run out of patience with Sloly, but he does his best to find some empathy for him, saying, like, he was getting pressure from all angles. He was getting pressure from the public who lived in and around the convoy. I don't think the public in general, to bust some heads. He was getting pressure from public safety for a quick resolution to meet the political goals of the government, being undermined by people all around him. So I think he was really in a pressure cooker, and I think he started to react probably poorly, because we saw testimony from Superintendent Abrams of the OPP that he got there and they were suggesting, the OPS were suggesting, let's do some snatch and grabs. And he said, we're not doing any of that until we get legal advice. And that was coming from Chief Sloly at the time.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I had a story that I broke a couple of days ago that was an audio recording of a call between convoy organizers and one of the OPP liaisons. And it was a call that was quite exceptional because he was apologizing for what the Ottawa Police Service had done with that fuel rate at Coventry and saying, we've just decided as OPP, we're bowing out, we can't deal with them. And he said they felt betrayed by Ottawa Police. But it was interesting because Sloly and the OPP Commissioner Carrick, it seemed like we're very, very tight. And the issue that former Chief Sloly kept raising today was Brenda Lucki, the RCMP Commissioner. And I think I feel like that meme with like the guy that's like just trying to weave all of these strings together and the chalkboard, like the conspiracy theorists. But we know that Brenda Lucki has shilled for the Liberals and has been very much an agent of the Liberal government's agenda. And in that context, not even convoy related, I wonder what's going to come out further in this inquiry when you find out that it was the RCMP that seemed like the weak link, Sloly felt anyway, as far as that unity and the lack of support for him.
Yeah, I wonder if Brenda Lucki is going to be exposed to be playing all sides of the fence here, because she's said, at least, you've seen some of these phone call readouts and in internal communications where she says, it's sort of the last thing that they were even thinking of at the time was the Emergencies Act. She was saying, let's get more tow trucks. We've got other tools in the toolbox, I think is what she said. And I wonder what she was taking back to cabinet from her conversations with Sloly. Was she saying one thing to Sloly, other things to cabinet, and Sloly again is caught flat-footed and just forced to react?
Yeah, and I mean, there's no greater tool in the toolbox than Marco Mendicino. And Marco Mendicino repeatedly said that, like, everyone in law enforcement, like the janitor at Ottawa Police Headquarters asked for the Emergencies Act. They all wanted it. And then all of them came out systematically and said, no, we didn't. And the one thing that was interesting that came up today that I found fascinating was that Bill Blair told Commission Counsel, it sounded like, in their interview with him, that Ottawa Police couldn't ask for officers from the RCMP unless they had gone through the OPP first. And Peter Sloly said, you know, that wasn't his attitude when he was the chief of Toronto Police. Like, I'm aware of no provisions in law that require that. So it does seem, and then Bill Blair in other comments was saying the opposite. So it seems like, again, there was some federal government RCMP overlap there that hasn't quite been fully explored and exposed in the commission.
Yeah, you mentioned Marco Mendicino, and we saw earlier today text messages that were revealed from someone who's works in his office, and Mary Liz Power. You know, we saw a text message. I'm sure we can put them on the screen. What did you make of that that exchange that we were able to see?
Actually, you know what? Before we get Andrew's comments, I think we have the video clip of that full exchange between Brendan Miller Time, the lawyer, and Sloly. So let's throw to that, and then we'll get Andrew's very poignant comments, I'm sure. Oh, she's going to bring it up. Okay, it'll just take a second. But on the issue of Bill Blair, on February 8th, I took a screenshot of the communications there. He was suggesting that there were plenty of other things available to the OPS. And that was just days before Blair's own government went for the nuclear option of the EA. I don't think anybody knew what was happening until just maybe hours before they dropped the EA. I don't think anybody really knew what was going to happen.
No, and I think that they saw their window was closing. And this goes back to all of the testimony we heard last week, 2 weeks ago, about the negotiations, which the commission process told us had actually was ministers were aware of it. Marco Mendicino was personally aware of it, that this negotiation was taking place between convoy organizers and the city of Ottawa.
Yeah, and that the convoy organizers were acting in good faith, and they had already moved some 40 trucks before the EA was invoked. And then when the EA was invoked, the operation to move the trucks stopped instantly because all the police officers were redeployed off that mission to go downtown and crack heads.
Yeah, so 40 trucks. So they had moved one truck for every one of Marco Mendicino's IQ points. And Marco Mendicino knew about it. And even knowing about it, still the Emergencies Act comes down the pipeline. And I'm convinced that they saw the window was closing. And if they'd waited even a day longer, they wouldn't have just had the justification to sell it to the public.
Right, right. And I think the tide would have, even the people who were against the truckers, seeing them acting in good faith might have turned a few hearts against what we saw happen next. And that was the extreme police overreach, which, as it turns out, as we found out today, was a communication strategy from Navigator, who are the worst. They're just the worst.
No, Olivia, I'm in the wrong line of work, though. $185,000 to give 2 weeks of advice on how to tweet about the police response to the convoy. That sounds like a pretty sweet deal.
And they didn't even do a good job. They said, show up in riot gear and start using force.
Did the Ottawa, has anyone come out of the convoy thinking, well, the Ottawa police, they really seem to know what was going on? Like, that was just money poorly spent.
They won the hearts and minds of the nation by their actions here that day. Yes, indeed. Olivia, did we find that clip of Brendan Miller, please?
If not, you probably, I tweeted the screenshot. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, we also have the screenshots and tweets.
Okay. I don't know if this is it.
That's not the video from him.
P.S. That's Peter Sloly.
No.
No, I sent the tweet with the screenshot just recently.
I love live. Live is great. It's so natural.
It's fine. We're always thinking on our feet. It's clip number 7, Olivia, if you wouldn't mind. Can we get to it?
We'll get to it.
Moment of truth.
This is it. Thank you.
There you go. And this is from about the 24th, on or before the 24th of January. And it says, I got a quick response. People are into it. Let me know if your boss is too. Happy to help however I can. This is what I sent through, though, by the way. Hi, I just had a chat with Alex at PS, meaning public safety, who had a bit of an interesting idea. As you saw in the pod goals chat, the truckers convoy and some of their more extreme comments in brackets, i.e. calling for a January 6th style insurrection, close brackets, are getting more coverage in the media. Alex was surveying whether there'd be interest in his boss doing some media on this eventually. He was chatting with Mendicino about it right before he went into the cabinet retreat. Now, I can tell you the cabinet retreat was on the 24th. That's how I know it was before the 24th. I think there could be an opportunity to get in on this growing narrative of the truckers, particularly with the research that LRB is doing into their backers. My thoughts of the framing here would be similar to what PM/Blair, meaning the Prime Minister and Minister Blair, said last year when January 6 occurred. And the first thing is, our democracy is something we need to nurture and protect every day. We will always support the right to peaceful protests. Some of the call that organizers of these events are making are concerning, and we're taking them seriously. In brackets, would need something to back this up, close brackets. We'll continue to monitor the situation closely. The fine line to walk would be to ensure we are not looking like we're directing the police, which obviously is not the goal here. Hoping to canvass your thoughts. Alex said he'd come back to me with a proposal this afternoon when he gets to chat with Ndiciano again, and obviously pending his boss and our interest in looking into this further. And if you could scroll down. And Alex responds, thanks. I had an initial chat with my boss and he's supportive, but wants to wait a day or two. There's a danger that if we come down too hard, they might push out the crazies. And then the response. I think that's fair. Apparently Global and others are working on stories. Maybe see how those land. So when I show you this, and after this, the exact same sort of narrative came out from the federal government following these suggestions from their staff. Is that misinformation?
I'm sorry, I can't really comment. There's just not enough context to know who these people are, what they represent, what information or influence they have.
Right.
See, now I'm back to not liking Peter Sloly. I mean, we know Alex Cohen is in public safety. Mary Liz Power, she's in the PMO. This is them plotting to smear the convoy before it ever even got there. 3 full days before the first truck even lands in the city, they're like, yep, let's paint this as Insurrection North. You know this happens. It's just galling to see it in text messages.
I'm actually on Peter Sloly's side on this one, because sometimes the evidence spins itself and you don't need to offer any commentary. And I feel like Brendan Miller, just like he could have said, read the text message and then be like, what's your favorite color? He just needed to get it in the record. And I don't think the answer mattered all that much. But the one thing that people might not pick up on, and I don't know if you can put the screenshots up, but when Mary Liz Power references LRB, that's the Liberal Research Bureau. Now, this is a taxpayer-funded but very partisan office that works to support the Liberals. Now, if this is a group of insurrectionists and white supremacists and extremists and terrorists, why is it a Liberal Research Bureau whose job is to do memes and question period briefing that has to run background checks on the convoy backers? Because it was a partisan issue. It wasn't a public safety issue.
Yeah. And I noticed here, and I think they admitted it accidentally, that the truckers themselves were engaging in a little bit of political hygiene. That they said if we start pointing out some of the crazier things the 3 crazy people on the convoy said, the truckers will start booting them out, and that's not politically advantageous for us to do right now. Yeah. We need the crazy people to stay longer so that we can use the few to taint the whole. So let's just hold back on that.
That was the True North headline, is that Mendocino wanted the crazies. They wanted there to be convoy crazy. So de-escalation was never the goal. They wanted escalation. And I think this text message exchange is incredibly revealing.
That proves it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because they were waiting on the old Telford op-eds to show up, knowing full well they could count on their friends in the Trudeau colonized bailout media to do exactly what they needed them to do. This is such a great headline. Good job.
That part was well, thank you for the plug there, but that part was fascinating too, is that she has foreknowledge. So she's not in comms, or Mary Liz Power. She used to be in comms, but she's in issues and policy for the Prime Minister's office. And she somehow has foreknowledge of what Global and other news outlets are working on. So again, I'm not like, maybe it was that they had asked the PMO for comment and word got down to her, but I think that was interesting. And there's another line, I can't remember the exact text, but if you can put it up, where she talks about the talking points that they're going to put forward. And she says, we stand up for democracy. And then there's a line where she says, some of them have said concerning things. And then in brackets, I need backup for this or something. Or there it is, would need something to back this up.
Yeah. I just saw CTV News do something similar
Cheer first,
this afternoon.
justify later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, CTV News is actively engaged in this as we speak. They tweeted out on Twitter they're hunting for some parent of an immunocompromised child so they can create a story around something that Premier Danielle Smith said, and they're doing it right there. They've said concerning things. Now we better go find those concerning things, and let's make sure we keep our eyeballs on the crazies because Mendocino needs the crazies. By the way, I want to ask you this, Andrew, because I don't know. Maybe I'm a conspiracy. No, I am a conspiracy theorist, I guess, sometimes. Do you think Brendan Miller is purposefully saying Marco Mendocino's name wrong? I thought he was screwing it up to begin with. Because as Albertans, we can only say one form of ethnic name properly, and that's Ukrainian. But other than that, we're not good with ethnic names. Is he doing it on purpose just to be irritating to everybody? I think he is.
Like Marco Marciano. And I remember that was like Ezra's old theory about Trump's tweets, is that Trump would deliberately put typos in because it made people more mad than the tweet without typos. So it could be that, like, we'll see in his cross-examination if he's like, Minister Mariupol, Marco Polo, like when he's cross-examining Mendocino, if he just like calls him a different name, because that's what it was. It was a different thing every time.
That's the thing.
It was like Marciano, and then it was like Mendacio, and
Mendocino or something.
Menzoid by the end of the week. It's gonna be like Minister Menzoid by the end of the
I think he's doing it on purpose, and I think he's workshopping names before he goes and talks about it. I swear to God. We're getting close to the top of the hour, and it is spooky season, and so I'm going to have little people at my door very, very quickly. Andrew, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on our show tonight. I hope you'll come on again very, very soon.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun. You're always welcome in the Airbnb. I hope the guys are keeping it tidy in there. You're going to have mom of the company show up.
I'm not
Andrew,
going to turn the camera around. I would never out these kind gentlemen. But there wasn't even like room for me to put my bag down on the couch. But anyway.
Guys, I knew it. Andrew, where can you tell people where they can get your best-selling book if they haven't already, because you sold a ton of these?
Yes, so you can get it on Sutherland House Books or on Amazon, or if you're going to be up at the Rebel Live event in the GTA in a couple of weeks, I will have books for sale there, and it devalues them if I sign them, but I would be happy to do it nonetheless.
Well, thank you so much. I'm very much looking forward to seeing you at Rebel Live in person. Olivia, do we have any chats, or are we clear of chats? Oh, we've got one. Perfect. Let's see where that is. Do we have? Okay, I'll just find it. Nope. Olivia. Okay, it's Pat Parr. I can't see it. I can't see it on my side, if you wouldn't mind. It's Pat Parr, $5, but I don't know what the comment is.
It says if an Emergencies Act is found to be unlawful, what can legally charge or done? I guess he means what can be legally charged or done to all who were complicit.
I don't think anything. This is an act of public accountability, and I guess it's up to the voters to hold the Liberals to account at the ballot box next time around. But the NDP are saying they're not going to break ranks with the Liberals no matter what shakes out here. So even, they're not even going to break the coalition.
Don't you think the NDP hedging was interesting on that? That all of a sudden, because normally they wouldn't entertain a thing, but now he's like, well, yeah, but even if it is, yeah, I don't see that as really doing anything. So it's like the NDP is seeing the writing on the wall here, I think.
I think so too, but you would think that they would unhitch their horse from that cart, but they aren't. I guess, power at all costs at the end of the day. Well, I think that's the show for tonight. Sorry, I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think politically it will have an impact. You're going to see the more centrist liberals that vote for the Liberal Party start to move away from the Liberal Party and go towards the Conservative Party. I think this is going to be an impact that we're going to see happening out of the inquiry. I think the NDP's deal with the Liberal might be shaken a little bit. I'm not entirely sure, but we never know what Jack Mead's saying. It depends if everything that he wants to be passed actually passes. I guess we'll see, but unfortunately, I don't think anything legal can be done out of it.
Nope, nothing. Nope. Well, everybody, that's the show for tonight. Olivia, thank you so much for working so hard and reacting when we are doing things unscripted here. Andrew, thanks so much. We'll have you back on again very, very soon. William, great job today, young man. And as David Menzies always says, stay sane.
being here today, but thank you to everyone in all cities around the world who are stepping forward to stand with the extraordinarily brave women of Iran and those standing with them. Thank you to the world for making sure we are all raising our voices and saying enough. Enough of the brutality, enough of the repression, enough of the violation of fundamental human rights. We know it's been enough.